Whereas the world is telling people to turn their mind off, Christianity says, no, think a lot about this.
Just feel like we're all woven together for his mission and his purpose.
Look at this, how God calls people and puts them in the right place at the right time.
What are we doing to stay grounded in that, to stay grounded in our vision and our mission?
Why do you want to get into like a Christian bubble where your kids don't know what's happening in the rest of culture and the rest of the world?
Why this partnership between school and church is not just functional, but powerful. Here we go. Welcome to the Disciple Standard podcast. My name is Aaron. I'm a pastor here at Sunlight Community Church, and we've got a fantastic show today regarding the school and the future of Sunlight Christian Academy. Of course, we have Mr. Multiply himself, Pastor Scott Vander Ploeg. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you.
This is your podcast, so welcome back to your podcast. We've got what is your title? The headmaster of schools.
The head of schools.
I don't know why I came. Why did headmaster come to my...
There's been a few titles over the years.
Okay, headmistress, headmaster...
Head of schools.
Head of
That's
schools.
What we landed on, yeah.
Head of schools.
Yes.
Sarah Wilson Hyde, SWH herself. Welcome to the podcast. First time.
What are all the options? We've got head of school, headmaster, headmistress.
Yeah, head of schools. That's.
Is there another option?
No.
Those are the three we can choose from?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Haas.
Ooh, I like that.
What up, Haas?
Oh, that's a little Haas.
Big Haas.
So I was just talking to a friend. Anytime he's in sales, and anytime someone refers to him as "What's up, boss?" he's like, "Yeah, I am boss."
Oh boy.
And I said, in Okeechobee, they'll call you Haas. For I don't know why, but it's like you're the boss, but the country twang. So
I forgot your
Haas.
title.
Nico gave me the title Anchorman, or the suggestion. I'm not sure if we agree with that. I like Aaron.
Oh, that's the apt Anchorman.
The apt Anchorman, or I think you said angry.
Angry.
The angry Anchorman.
We're gonna.
What'd you do to your knee?
So yeah, this is I do Jiu-Jitsu. I don't know.
Wasn't your other knee in a problem not that long ago?
Yes, so our SRD, we hire great SRDs here.
Which is
very
sheriff
capable.
Deputy,
Yes.
Sheriff Resource Deputy.
Yes, the very capable people. I try to when I start to like grapple and roll, I kind of just go. I kind of like go.
So you were
bloodlust.
fighting.
Yeah.
You were fighting the school resource officer.
Yeah, this first
and
I had his neck wrapped up in a way that probably wasn't the best way, and he was trying to get out of it. And he pulled my knee this way against its will, and so that put me in the.
You were in a wheelchair for a while.
8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Right now.
Okay, but you healed.
I healed. I'm doing squats.
Miraculously.
Yeah, I could do one leg squats with this.
Okay, well now what happened to this knee?
So I was rolling with one of his friends apparently, like that's another
grappling,
deputy.
Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, in the local gym nearby. The professor's great. And it's very close to the school, and so I actually got I'm recruiting for whatever reason. I recruited Riley, your son.
He loves it.
He loves it, man, and I love that I found something with him to do.
Yep.
So it's great.
So Riley is now fighting grown men.
He is.
He's good at it too. He's got a good affinity for it. So
he's got an affinity for fighting.
Yeah. He's like, you could tell he's like learning and thinking.
I thought he might have hurt your knee, but he said it wasn't him.
No.
So I think, and you can tell me if you're wrong. And this is maybe we're gonna help get to a better title for you.
Okay.
But aren't you really good at it?
No, I'm not really good. No, there's someone who
you're like a state champion wrestler.
Yeah, but even when you get to that levels, and I was in a state champion. But even if you understand in tennis, when you're really good at tennis, you're good compared to.
Yeah, I understand.
So that I'm really good compared to someone who's never trained before.
Okay.
But to compare it to a purple belt or a black belt, I'm I know that there are levels to this thing.
Okay, so they're way better than you.
Yeah, so given any random...
If you're fighting somebody who's not as good as you, is it good to break their knee?
Depends on the situation, right? That's what. So, okay. So let me say two things. Number one, if you're a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, you have near superpowers over someone who's never trained before.
Okay.
It would be impossible. And when I say never trained, I really mean like never trained wrestling or grappling or any of that.
Yeah.
Because that stuff matters too.
Yep.
So you have superpowers over someone who's zero training in any combat. It's not even close. It's
Combat.
Yeah, combat superpowers. Now to break someone's leg, frowned upon heavily because you're a team. So this is a debate. This is a great debate. In sports. People have a misconception on individual sports like boxing, grappling, golf, that there's no team element to it. However, I think when you're in the gym and training, especially combat sports, you have a massive amount of team element in that. And so when you hurt someone or break someone's knee or whatever like that, it is like remorse over everyone's faces. Like it's extreme. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah. Like no one is happy about this. Everyone stopped. The whole class stopped. It was a whole thing. And that's just the.
How hurt were you? Because now you're wheeling around in a wheelchair again.
The initial hurt is actually like zero because I think the adrenaline pumps through me. So I was walking off. I thought I could keep on going. Later that night, the throbbing, and then the next day was the heaviest, I think. Now I think I'm good. We're getting there. So I'm starting to walk on a little bit. You could have a little bit of movement and stuff like that. So yeah.
I told Aaron earlier, the older you get,
yeah, I know, right?
Are you prepared to take care of Riley when something like this happens to him? Like, are you willing to carry him around the house?
Of course I am.
No, not your baby boy. Let that man walk. Let that man walk it off.
But I think he's going to be great. He has a lot of athletic training behind him.
Oh, he does. Yeah, he's very athletic.
Yeah, very athletic.
Yeah.
Young too, because he'll get healed properly. But he won't, like, this kind of injury is like bullheaded mentality. Like I just keep on going. I knew I should have stopped, and I just kept on going just because. So
Riley is a redhead.
Yeah.
He's got that stubbornness, right?
That's funny.
When you're fighting like this, do you access the emotion of anger?
No.
Never.
No, never. No.
Would it help you?
No, because in jiu-jitsu, you have to think. It's like chess.
It's not.
It's human chess.
Getting a bunch of anger going in your body is not going to help you. It's going to hurt you.
No, it's actually calming. You have to center yourself and like, okay, what is the next move, and what are the potential?
I'm about to be choked out here. I'm losing air.
That's
what
right.
do I do?
Yeah, if you get angry, you lose your thought process into, okay, what do I need to do? I need to peel the hands, or I need to drop my chin, or whatever. So, angry starts to flail, and you start to lose.
Why, as a grown adult, do you want to do this sport?
Oh, great question. Several reasons I could name, but let me just start with the ones that immediately come to mind.
Yeah. I
feel like I could walk into most rooms and not be concerned about personal well-being.
What does that mean?
I'm not concerned with anyone trying to manhandle me, threaten me. I have zero concern.
Okay.
Based on size, based on whatever. Even if they've done jiu-jitsu, like I at least have a defensive position. I know I'm a little more aware. So that leads into.
It's interesting you
confidence.
say that, because I walk into most rooms. I have no concern about that either.
Right.
But
right. So like,
you have some kind of combat mentality, like, well, someone here might.
Well, if you roll into like a let's say a dive bar, or a missions, like on the missions trip, you're like rolling into somewhere. Of course, there's some level of concern because they're not gonna engage you like physically. They might pull a knife or whatever. Or just the other day, Saran talked about he was in the gas station and some dude like drew his gun or something like that.
At Saran?
No, at the gas station attendant. He's gonna have to tell his own story. Well, and then another time this happens to Saran, I don't know why. And another time, like someone tried to open his car door at a gas station.
But if someone pulled a gun, I don't know if jiu-jitsu is the best response.
That's true. And it's not, but that's not the proper response for a gun. That's just like the calm that you walk in.
So, okay, I get it. There's violence out there in the world, and you're not concerned about it because you have trained.
Well, yeah, I think so I was just on the other, on the soccer field, and they're like really animated. I don't know. It's just not that I'm ready to fight.
Oh, you ever look at the other soccer parents, you're like,
no. This guy was.
One of you is going to cross me.
These guys take soccer seriously. I'm like, what is going on? And they're like throwing the cap down, yelling at the ref. I was like, this is just like they're in like third grade. You know what I'm saying? Like this is not any reason to get
Oh man, I want to talk
animated
more
over.
about this. This is great. Why are parents that way?
That's a good question.
You're out there. You're ready to fight them at any moment, but you don't need to.
Yeah.
But why do you think parents get so animated with like
At the yeah.
soccer with 5-year-olds?
At the deepest level, I think it's a desire of significance that they weren't able to attain on themselves, so they project that on their kids at the
Okay.
deepest level. At the like the shallow level, you know, they got offended in some their conscience got like poked at a little bit, you know, or whatever, the ego rather. So yeah, a whole host of reasons. Fragile. It's probably
Everyone thinks their child's going to go into the NFL, or the
everyone. Oh my
NBA,
goodness,
or, you know,
everybody.
that's their hope. So I feel like they're just really into it.
Yeah,
they
and
want
it's
to
something like
succeed.
0.1% of people actually make it there, and then
Yeah, it's
stay
very
there, and
small.
then get successful there. You know, it's like it's something very extremely small.
But
So
people, they put a lot of effort into giving their kids opportunities like this to, you know, like I know lots of parents who've got their kids on travel teams or various different sports. And
yeah,
I mean, there's a big kind of effort or push.
yeah, I think so. I don't know. There's also like another effort or push for parents to like, yeah, just like live vicariously or want
Yeah.
so I heard Jordan Peterson talk about this one time. He said parents nowadays have like much more they're waiting later in life to have kids, and what that does, it gives them more money, more ability to take care of their kids and give the kids what they want. So they do. So like older parents with more money are giving kids more opportunities because they think they want to be that's the best thing for the kid. That's what they want to make the kid happy, which obviously starts in a good place. But then it ends up in a spot where like you are now spending thousands of dollars and spending your weekends out of control to go play travel ball in another place when your kid is like second grade, you know, like and then what do you give up? There's an opportunity cost in that as well, I think. So now the kid understands like, oh, okay, my parents will turn their whole week around and their whole weekends will for me spend lots of money, and then maybe that adds like pressure to the kid to play. You know, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things that can play
Yeah.
for this.
Now I'm just thinking about this. Maybe we could think about like 3 different aspects of what it means to be human. So you've got like this physical aspect, then you've got the mental aspect or intellectual aspect, and then you've got the spiritual or soul.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me, I think for most people, and I'm just thinking about this with regard to parenting too, I don't know why, but it seems like if you think about like physical, mental, spiritual, if you'd prioritize them, you say, wow, spiritual should be first. It's like the core of who I am. Then mental should be second. Man, I should really develop my mind and learn and whatever. And then physical should be third because it's not like it's unnecessary or not important, but like if you're just to rank them,
Yeah.
yeah, you could physically be, you know, a really healthy, I don't know, strong person physically or whatever. But man, if you haven't developed yourself mentally,
Yeah.
that's a shame. And then if you haven't developed the core of who you are spiritually, that's like a bigger shame. Anyway, I'm just thinking about this like in terms of being a parent. You would think that most parents at the end of the day would do well to say, man, my top priority is like my kid's soul, who they are, to really develop and guard that and guide it, followed by who they are sort of intellectually, and then followed again by who they are physically. I still think that's important too. But I don't know. Do we have a kind of thought like that in our culture today? A lot of times it's just,
Yeah.
and maybe, like you said, it's about significance. So maybe there's a spiritual reason why we're pursuing this physical thing so hard.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get recognition there, or I don't know.
Significance is probably plays a role in the spiritual
Yeah, it
aspect of
does.
things. I think, yeah, I just think about like Stoic philosophers kind of tiptoeing around those same ideas. I think this, especially there are aspects of spiritual or physical and spiritual that link together really nicely.
Yep.
Like fasting will do that for people. In a negative way, yoga can do that. It's been,
What do you mean in a negative way?
well, I mean, these weird voodoo, like, yoga, like spiritual, one with the earth, like hug a tree, you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of,
Okay.
like new age type of stuff. And
Metaphysical.
yeah, metaphysical stuff.
But I also think like people who really develop in a variety of different areas can really worship God with their bodies too. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was going to say, like, we were talking before the show about the intellectual side and how that leads into spiritual. That's certainly what got me into Christianity.
Yeah.
Not got me into Christianity, but like sparked a passion for it, because a lot of people think that's separate, and we see it as totally different. Like, you turn your brain on, as you say, when you develop an understanding on an intellectual basis for faith, and
Right.
that's like, that sparks something spiritual. And
Well, there's definitely something in our culture when it comes to dealing with problems where I think the best advice is get your mind off the problem, amuse yourself. So like, man, I'm going through a tough time. Let me go visit Disney and just get my mind off this. Or,
Yeah.
oh, I'm really going through this problem. Let me just watch a movie so that I can, follow the storyline of the movie and get my mind off of whatever.
Right.
But I think Christianity definitely, whereas the world is telling people to turn their mind off, Christianity says, no, think a lot about this. Like, think more deeply.
Yeah.
Don't stay thinking where you're at. Let's think more deeply all the way to the bottom of the problem.
Yeah, that's actually, to wrap up the jiu-jitsu thread, that's like how it is in jiu-jitsu. It's not like you get blinded by anger and you just try to kind of rage through a dynamic problem, which is a person. The person's a dynamic problem trying to attack you and trying to figure you out. You don't just check out. You tune in. You figure out. You like, okay, what is going to happen? What are the traps? What are the snares? What is the threat to me, and how can I overcome? That's literally what you're thinking through steps. And I think in Christianity, it's something similar. It's not like I've got a massive looming problem of like cancer or death or finances. Like, let me just go check out and watch a movie or whatever. Let me check in, like, and whatever problem it is, like, you got to go down those roads. So
I didn't realize when I was asking you about your knee that it'd be such a great way of queuing up what we have as a topic today. But the topic today really has to do with Christian education.
yeah,
And we've got our Hoss here.
the Haas.
We got the Hoss. And it does seem to me like, okay, why Christian education? And there's a few things that we've now talked through that I think, surprisingly, your jiu-jitsu injury and you're being wheeled around on a wheelchair kind of tease up.
I'm not being wheeled around. I'm wheeling myself around.
Okay, whichever way, it's fine. I just noticed the injury has led
Yes.
to you going around in a wheelchair again. But now this is what I'm thinking about myself, like, why Christian education? And I think now you think about these things we just brought up: physical, mental, spiritual. I think a great Christian school cares about all of that. And, even I'm thinking about the value of like relationships, which is so important to surround yourself with a community of people who are really going to help, a child develop. I think all of us realize, man, like if my kid falls in with the wrong crowd, that could be like a horrible thing to happen to my kid.
Yeah.
So as parents, we really guard against that. Like, man, I got to get the right people around my kid. So even the relational part, but I think the relational is spiritual and it's intellectual and it's the whole thing, because how am I going to be interacting with people around me? What do they care about? Am I in a culture of amusement where I turn my mind off? To muse is to think, and am I going to try as much as possible to turn my mind off, or am I going to really think deeply about the world and, all the aspects of this world, from math to, biology to literature to whatever. I think, and do that in a way that you do it before God. So you kind of live wholeheartedly rather than, I don't know, a lot of the rest of our culture just tries to race down to physical only.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's people who wind up in school and they're there for the sports,
Yeah.
which is great. The sports are great. They're all part of God's creation. But, I need to maintain a certain grade point average so I can keep playing sports
Sure.
is not, yeah, it's not being all the kind of wholehearted, full person that God intended us to be.
Yeah. So let's start at big picture then.
Okay.
What personally drives your passion for Christian education for the both of you guys?
Well, let's start with Haas.
For me, it's a deep love of children and families and connections. And I feel like everyone should have a place where they feel they belong and that they're loved, a community. And then God gifts everyone with talents and abilities and equips them with things that they should share and pour into the next generation. And what better way to do that than in a loving, valuable community?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And want to know what's interesting? And I think this is so important. In fact, Sarah and I have spent some time recently talking about this, that as we think about the Christian school, one of the things that we think is just super important is that students wind up having relationships with teachers and staff that aren't just, I don't know, transactional. You're in my class and I'm going to teach you this subject and then you'll be out of my class and I don't care about you. But like, I'm thinking about the fact we have, and Jake, maybe you can like search Facebook and find this, but one of our very first students, Lance Fleschner, he was in our preschool and he just graduated from the University of Miami Law School. And just a great accomplishment. What's interesting is about that, you'd think, oh, he just went to preschool here. But actually, for both Lance and his mom and his sister, who went through our preschool as well, we didn't have an elementary school yet. They consider what happened here at the preschool to be like the most formative part of his education. And I really love that. And I think that one of the things we're striving to do is not just, I don't know, like I said, like as a transaction, we teach a kid a subject for a little while and then, whatever. But we're trying to really have a situation where, hopefully when these kids are like 35 years old, they're still talking to their middle school teachers because they made such an impact on them. And they know that they have relationships and friends for life. And I think that kind of community is not easy to come by, but is what we're really striving to do in this school is, we're not just trying to pump some information into kids' heads.
Yeah.
You got to get that information. We do want to develop people mentally. We want them to become the very best version of, the gifts and talents that God gave, children to be, people to be mentally. But I think actually like to have real relationships and to have people who are in your corner and who care about you and who didn't just care about, could you spit this information back to a test so that I can get my bonus at the end of the year. But man, they care about every aspect spiritually.
That's really sad. That's really sad when you say that. It's like the way we think about kids and we as like adults, right, can change drastically. Like, oh, this is a way for me to get my bonus. Like, so I'm going to teach the test, or this is like, this could be there's a God-sized potential in this kid. And I want to see what kind of comes out of it.
And I think a lot of teachers, I'm not trying to say that if you're in a public school, this is the way the teachers are, is they only care about getting their bonus by getting you to pass a test. I think there's a lot of great public school teachers who truly do care about their kids. So I'm not, I only mean that by way of trying to point out or show what is the mission of Sunlight Christian Academy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation with Miss Dina. She's our behavior interventionist. And we were talking about redirecting behaviors and working with the families. And reaching the whole family.
Yeah.
And she was talking about a child who had a lot of anger issues and behavioral concerns. Her husband is over at the soccer fields. He runs one of the programs there, and she got with the family. She expressed she felt he should have an outlet and play sports, and the family took the child over there, and now he's playing under her husband, and they're becoming close friends, and they care about each other. I mean, this is the kind of thing that happens here at Sunlight. We love the child. We go beyond the classroom, and we want to be a part of their lives and ensure that we're doing everything we can for them.
Yeah, it seems like what you're doing at the school is extremely countercultural to what seems to be typical in the school system. I think a lot of people are kind of would agree with that because we've just experienced such tremendous growth over the last, year over year, just
God.
crazy growth. Walk us through that growth and the growth curve. What's been surprising about it? Anything that's been interesting, or what have you learned through how quickly things expanded?
Okay, I want to just tell a story because here we're on a podcast with the Hoss.
Yes.
So I'd like to tell a story, and then I'm only going to get so far, and then I'm going to let Sarah take over and talk about the development of our school from there. So this is a story of how I came to know Sarah. So in 2004, when Andrew and I first came here to Port St. Lucie, it's actually, I don't know, I look back, I think it's so funny. Our oldest daughter, Marissa, had just been born, so Andrew did not come along. So let's just start with that. So I was here at the kind of interview myself, and I was really blown away by what a mission field Port St. Lucie was. I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about where the church was at or, what was the condition of things. Just like, man, look at this. This is a mission field, and I know that God just used that in my life to draw us here. Anyway, there's always the interview, and people had a lot of questions for me. And then I remember at some point in the interview, they said, "Do you have any questions for us?" Well, Andrew and I are from Montana and Idaho. So my biggest question is I think I phrased it this way: what's the deal with hurricanes? Because I was mildly aware of the fact that hurricanes hit Florida, and I wanted to know, what should I think about this if we move down here? Anyway, I remember the answer. The answer was so good. The answer was this: hey, there's a weather phenomenon called a vortex. And what this vortex does is it steers hurricanes to the north toward the Carolinas or south toward the Keys. It's virtually impossible for a hurricane to hit Port St. Lucie. And I was like, wow, okay, great. And so great that when Andrew and I moved here, we actually moved into a mobile home out on Hutchinson Island, which is a barrier island. And
No fact checked on this one. No fact checking on this one.
No, so this is where we lived.
No, I mean with the vortex.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, I'm about to fact check this vortex big time. All right, I accepted there was a vortex. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that makes sense, actually. I always hear about hurricanes hitting the Keys. I always hear about hurricanes hitting the Carolinas. That makes sense. That's what I thought to myself. Okay. So we moved in July of 2004, and then I think it was either late August, early September, we have Hurricane Francis. Direct hit Port St. Lucie. And it couldn't have been more than a couple of weeks later, Hurricane Jean. Direct hit Port St. Lucie. I mean, the eye wall of both hurricanes went right over us. And anyway, for Andrew and I, we became homeless. We couldn't continue living in this mobile home. It had been knocked off the blocks. It was not livable. You couldn't even get there. There was so much sand over the road. So it was a pretty difficult time because it was like a bomb had gone off. I still think about the images of this time in Port St. Lucie. There was no electricity, trees down everywhere. Almost every single roof had a tarp on it. We really had two direct hits of hurricanes. We were in a bad way, Anyway, there was a local preschool called Sunflower Educare that it's not too far from here, but a little bit of a distance. And there was a little tornado that spun off, and their building was completely destroyed. So the owner of that business, and it's just a privately owned preschool business, came over to the church and at that time asked me whether it would be possible if they could rent space from us while they rebuilt. And he told me that, these parents won't have a place for their kids. They have to go to work. What are they going to do? And these kids aren't going to have a school. And then I remember him saying, and I'm going to lose my business. I'm going to go under if I can't figure out a way. And at that time, our church didn't have any kids. And when I moved here, I was thinking to myself, like, all right, how are we going to reach young families with young kids? And, they didn't know this and I didn't reveal it, but had they asked us if we would have paid them as a church, we might have.
Yeah.
Like bring these families through the doors of our church. But they were going to pay us. And so they were here from September probably until April of the following year in 2005. And they ran their preschool out of our church building Monday through Friday. And so in the church world, there's a lot of people know Rick Warren, who's a famous pastor in Southern California. He wrote a book that a lot of people know called The Purpose-Driven Life. But before that, he wrote a book called The Purpose-Driven Church, which one of his famous lines is, because he's from Southern California, he's like, hey, look, a lot of times pastors and church leaders try to manufacture God doing something. And he says, surfers don't do that. They don't manufacture waves. They have to wait for the wave that, the ocean sends. You can't just surf. You gotta ride the wave. And he said that pastors and church planters should ride the wave that God sends them. Like, okay, you don't have to try to manufacture something happening. God's going to send a wave and just, orient yourself so that you're able to get up on your surfboard when the wave God sends, it's a metaphor.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I was like, man, okay, we got to ride the hurricane that God sent. Like, God, I think, just showed us. I could have manufactured, like, figuring out how to get all these, there's like 40 some preschoolers are coming into our building every day. I couldn't have manufactured that situation, but like, look, God just showed us, like, you can run a preschool out of your building.
Yeah.
So there was a group of people around the church. We all started talking about this, and then we decided, okay, we're going to open a preschool. And this was, they moved out April 2005. We almost immediately started looking for like a director for the preschool. And actually, we were kind of going round and round. There was quite a few people that we had considered. And then finally what wound up happening is there was a person that we wound up hiring. And that person kind of started in like August. We were going to open in January of 2006. And I won't say any more about it, but I'll just say this, that it didn't work out with that director. And maybe it was like toward the end of October, we parted ways with that director. And all of a sudden, as the pastor of the church, I realized, okay, I didn't intend for it to be this way, but now I'm the director of this preschool. And I literally like poured my heart into getting this school opened. I mean, I learned everything a person can learn about preschools. I went around, I started working with Christian Schools of Florida to try to get, work on the accreditation of this preschool. I started, I built the first handbooks, the parent handbooks, the teaching handbooks. I put together what the curriculum would be. I mean, I really in a few month span, just more or less became like the first director of our preschool. And I learned a lot along the way. And one of the things I knew I needed was some help. So I started hiring a few people to kind of help me administratively. And we had got the preschool up and running, and I can't remember when, but it was pretty early on. Was it in the first semester, or was it maybe it was in the second semester in the fall of what would have been 2006, right? It's the fall when I first came across the Hoss. She wasn't the Hoss at the time. I heard it'd be my kind of like administrative assistant. And There are a lot of things that I was just impressed with Sarah right from the start because I needed help. And I think, yeah, at that point, probably you would just say I needed a job. Like it wasn't like I want to go into Christian education or I have a vision for the future. And I didn't have like this huge vision for the future of what all this could become either. I was just like, man, I got to find a way to get this preschool to work. And I think, the first semester from January until like May, maybe we grew to 20 some students. In fact, I think there's a slide later where maybe we'll show it, kind of the growth of the school. But then we reopened with about 20 some kids and we started growing toward having like 40 preschoolers in that, that first full school year, 2006, 2007 school year. And at some point in there, Sarah came on and she was just sort of like my administrative helper.
Came in November of '06.
Okay, there it was. But I noticed that Sarah had a ton of leadership potential. And I could start listing all the things that I saw. I mean, she's like a really great writer. And you wouldn't have to be a really great writer, but she was. And I'm like, oh, she's a great thinker. She was strategic. She was willing to work hard. And also, I just see that people responded to her. And anyway, so I think slowly but surely, and I don't remember the total timeline, but I do remember that I think it was after the spring of 2007, we really didn't have a director. There was a person who came in kind of like an interim director, but we really didn't have a director. And yeah, I spent some time convincing at that time our school board, hey, I realize there's a lot that Sarah still needs to learn, but I think we ought to give her the reins. And yeah, I think you were excited to take the reins, and I would say she never looked back. So as we started growing, she realized like, okay, I've got to go and finish my education in various different areas. And I've been just impressed because whatever was needed, whether it was like, I got to get these credentials, I got to get these degrees. And as we've developed, like Sarah has this, I don't know. I think it's interesting what happens when God puts a call in your life.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say about it is like, yeah, it wasn't so much that I did a good job figuring out that the next director should be Sarah. I think actually like, if I think back, like at the time, you're not aware of it, but when you look back, I think God actually had a call on Sarah's life, caused her to move down to Florida. She ended up taking a job, but it was just so she could be put in the right place to follow the calling that God had in her life. And anyway, I think actually like Sarah becoming the hoss was like a big turning point. And I don't know that I've ever, besides right now, had the opportunity to talk through that. Like, man, look at this, how God calls people and puts them in the right place at the right time. And probably at the time, I mean, I don't know. Can I ask you, when you first moved down here, certainly you weren't thinking about what would be. Why'd you take the job?
So I come from the corporate world. I come from a background in finance, and I just moved to Port St. Lucie, and I had applied for a lot of
Why'd
jobs.
you move to Port St. Lucie?
It's a long story, but I was in North Carolina at the time,
Yep.
and I had a child and gone through a divorce.
Right.
So I moved down here with my 1-year-old son, and my mom's husband had a house for rent here that I could live in.
Okay.
And I was like,
That was the reason Port St. Lucie.
Port St. Lucie.
The house.
I don't know anybody, but I lived in this house. So I applied for a bunch of jobs, and I saw sunlight. And I've always loved like the sun and the moon and the stars. And I was like, oh, this is so nice. And so I applied here, and I got the job, and it was going to be temporary until I found something back in the corporate world. And God definitely had different plans. I really was welcomed here. I was part of the family here at Sunlight. You guys embraced me and my son, and that was a big part of it. And then my mission was to make every family who walked through this door of Sunlight to feel like they were a part of our Sunlight family here. And that's kind of how it all started.
You had a Catholic background.
I did.
And so even being part of a Protestant church was something that was new.
Brand new.
But yeah, I think over the course of time, like, your faith has really grown.
Nothing's grown
And
my faith more than
yeah, so
being
just
here at
reflect
Sunlight.
on that a little bit. Why? Why did your faith grow? What were the causes of all that? And
I truly felt a calling here. From the moment I walked in for the interview, I mean, I was scared. I had just gone through a divorce. I didn't
Yeah.
know anyone in this city. And I was like, what am I doing? This is like a part-time job. I need to raise my son. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I felt the Holy Spirit as soon as I walked through the door. It was the most powerful feeling I've ever felt. And I still feel it. And I was just like this complete sense of calm. I knew that this was the place to be. I met you. I feel like you and I connected right away, and you had mentioned that you knew right away that I was supposed to be here, and I felt loved, and I felt needed, and I
Yeah.
felt called. And so, when you have that feeling in your heart from God, you'll do anything it takes to fulfill that mission. And all the jobs I've had, all the successes I've had leading up to this, it was empty. I never felt like a fulfillment or a reason. And I came here, and that's all it took.
you know, I'm sorry, I'm just taking over the podcast here,
No,
Aaron,
please.
but I want to talk about something now we got into this topic of calling. So I don't really know how to describe to other people what it feels like when, like, it seems like God reaches down from heaven and calls you. But I've had several instances in my life where I just felt like, not that I heard an audible voice from God, but like I just knew that God was calling me to something. One of those times was actually before Andrew and I went on the mission field in Nigeria. And I don't know, it's sort of a funny story to me because it was in the middle of the winter and it was like over Christmas break. And I was bored, or I was living in Michigan. And I said to Andrea, I'm like, let's go sledding. And she's like, I don't want to go sledding. I'm like, come on, let's go sledding. There was no one else around. So finally, I had such an itch to go sledding that I took my sled and I hiked, to this distant place where there's a hill where I could go sledding. And I was just sledding by myself, which is so weird when I think back to it because Andrea didn't want to go. Well, anyway, when you're sledding, you hike up a hill, you sled down it. You hike up a hill, you sled down it. I'd probably done that 5-6 times, and I slid down the hill. And I remember just coming to a stop at the bottom of the hill. And I remember looking up in the night sky. The moon was there, the stars were there, and I don't even know how to describe it, but I just felt God tell me, okay, you're going on to the mission field in Africa. It was such a strong impression, and I'll never forget the feeling of it. I walked home and I was like, Andrea, I think God wants us next year to go on the mission field in Africa.
Was Africa like a word in your like?
It must have been there somehow, but
Okay.
I came home and I'm like, we're going. Okay. No details, anything like that. I'm telling you that 2 weeks later, all the details were set. Like, it turned out like 2 days later, I met this person from our denominational mission agency who's like, man, we've got this position open in Nigeria. I'm trying to find someone who fill it. I'm like, oh, well, it turns out like I'm your guy.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you that like a couple weeks later, we had signed on the dotted line. And 6 months later, we were in an airplane. We're headed for Africa.
That's funny.
And the reason I bring that up is anyone who knows the story of our time in Nigeria knows that we went through some really tough times. And whether it was just surviving, trying to have enough water every day, to getting caught in the middle of wars, all kinds of things, like, it was a wonderful time, but it was very difficult. And I remember thinking to myself how important it was that I had that moment on that snow hill, that I knew God wanted me to be there, because otherwise I'd just get up and leave. Okay? Anyway.
God called you into difficulty.
Like look, if I thought to myself like, oh, this is just something I'm doing and you're in the middle of these difficulties, you'll get out. You'll just get out. Why would you stay if you don't think? But I knew, like, no, God wants us to be here. And I think that helped us to, like, persevere through the difficulties or tough times. Anyway, I'm building towards something I want to ask Sarah. I had the same thing when I came here to Sunlight. Oh, that's weird. Now that I think about this, I guess when God issues these callings to me, Andrea's not around. Because I had that interview here, and I can remember when it was all said and done, I was preparing to go back to Port St. Lucie. I had this moment. It was actually in our parking lot, which is where our playground is now. There's no parking lot there anymore. It's not far from where my office is. I probably look out on the spot where it happened. And again, it wasn't an audible voice, but I'm telling you, like, I knew God wants us to come here. I went back to the hotel and I called Andrea. I'm like, this is where we're going. And she's like, you don't know that. There's 2 other candidates for the job. They all have all this experience. You have no experience. I'm like, babe, I know this is where God wants us to be. I know it. And then even though there were these 2 other candidates that had much more experience, next thing you know, like, they asked us to come be the pastor here, and
I told you.
like, it all worked out.
I knew it.
It all worked out. But over all these years, there have been times where, like, it wasn't easy. Like, there were tough things that we were going through or whatever, and I could have done other stuff. You know, like, there's other opportunities, and I could have just said, whatever. I've done enough here, or I could move on. But I haven't had another one of these experiences where God, like, all right, you know, you're going to do this, or I don't know how to describe it because it's not an audible voice. But the reason I'm bringing all this up is in the middle of all those hard times, I'm like, okay, but yeah, God called me to be here. And so he must have a plan. And I just kind of trusted in that or rested in that. Anyway, I know that being the hoss isn't always easy. And it can be lonely, and there can be times where you're like, oh man, why am I even doing this? And I'm sure from your perspective, there's plenty of other things that you could do, and maybe even think to yourself like, oh, by now I could retire or whatever, right? But I think you have a calling, and I wonder if you'd talk about how having that calling has impacted the way in which you led the school.
Sure. I mean, definitely. I'm going on year 19, so
Yeah.
I've been here a long time. And of course, over the years, I've, explored what else could I do? Is this where I'm supposed to be? And every single time I try to think about it, I literally go blank. Like, I can't think of anything else. And I'm like, really? Like, I had all this experience. I have not felt called anywhere else ever. And so I can agree with you there. I feel like I love this place. I
Yeah.
feel like this place is my baby. It's been amazing to see God work through the Holy Spirit and the people that he sent here. You go way back in the day to the Ginger and the Heather,
Right.
and all the people that have come along the way. And he's equipped all these wonderful people with gifts and talents, and he's literally delivered them to me. And he's sent them messages that they've shared with me. And I know it's not just coming from them. So I know God is using the Holy Spirit to connect me to these people.
Yeah.
And it's just continued. The same goes with the families that have come and the children. And I just feel like we're all woven together for his mission and his purpose. And yes, I'm at the helm with the support of many important people in my life here. And I can't leave because I know God wants me here, and I know he has more planned for me. He wants to work through me to grow this school even larger and
So
impact more families.
this is something that I guess I kind of just thinking about, which is not only you, but you're surrounded by a lot of people, and there's been a lot of hard work. You could call it blood, sweat, tears.
Yeah.
I just think of like various construction projects we've had and the difficulty of, lots of things. But at least for me, and I'm not discounting any of your hard work or anyone else's hard work, when I look back, I really think to myself, I don't think we really did anything. I think we were here. God was doing it. He was using us. But like everything that's happened, and it's truly an amazing story, I'm not trying to discredit any of your hard work, but or any of my hard work or any of anyone's hard work or Aaron or anybody, but like, have we even done anything? Like, God knew how to send people here and who we needed and what should happen next. And
I like to tell everyone I feel like Moses, because I'm always
okay,
like, really, God? Like, as we've gotten bigger and bigger and it's become, more of a responsibility, I'm like, you want me to do this? I don't think I can do this. And he's like,
yeah, that's
nope,
interesting.
I want you to do this, and I'm going to send you the right people and the right tools to get it done. And he's never failed me. And that's why I know, like I said, my faith has grown so strong from being a part of this ministry.
Yeah, and probably we're all like unlikely people to have experienced a privilege like this of being involved in something that's become so substantial. And like, if you think about it, like, who were we?
Right. That's exactly right.
Who were we? I remember when I first like became the director of the preschool, I'm like, what a director of a preschool? Like at the time, I didn't know anything about kids or preschools or anything. So it was like, it's all unlikely. But yet, that's why I say when I look back, I'm like, man, God had a plan.
When
Anyway.
when you guys are reflecting, I enjoy watching you guys like kind of seeing God walk you through the years. We talk about the growth, but what about the person who comes here for the first time? What would you say to that person is the mission of Sunlight Christian Academy?
I mean, for me, I would say that, we welcome you here with open arms. We want to instill the love of Jesus Christ into the hearts of all of our children and families. And we're going to do that in every way possible. It's not just about the classroom. It's not just about the academics. It's not just about sports, but it's about the whole person, and it's about you being part of our family. And that's our mission here. We want to know you. We want to know your child, and we want to be a part of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Same question for you, I guess.
Well, first of all, I think, Sarah's done a good job of describing it. But I really do believe, and, this is something I give Sarah a lot of credit for because she talks all the time about the Sunlight family. They've walked through the door for the first time, and I think I've heard her say it many times, like, welcome to the family. And that has been something that I would just say is like an approach that we really have embodied and lived out, which is we have open arms for just everybody.
Yeah.
And
Relationships, connections.
yeah, I think I always, over the years have talked about kind of like these twin pillars. I have, one of the pillars that I have in my mind is that we are going to become the very, very best. When I was a preschool, I was like, we're going to be the best preschool in the state of Florida. We're going to have the best teachers. We're going to have the best curriculum. We're going to have the best facilities. And anyone who walks into our preschool will be like, wow, this is the best. And then when we got into elementary school, I was like, okay, we're going to become like the best elementary school around. And I just have in mind, like, not just academics, but for the whole person, like anyone who comes to our school will hopefully see that there's like a quality. We're not, we're bringing a quality education, a top-notch Christian education to every single student and to their families. But then there's a second pillar, which is, and I make sure to tell our staff this all the time, which is we're a mission. We have the mission to spread the gospel, the love of Jesus, to all the kids and to all the families. And, the nature of our school, there's some Christian schools that are covenant schools, which means that the schools exist for families of Christians. In fact, probably the majority of Christian schools in our nation, that's what it is. we want to educate our kids. Christians build Christian schools to educate our kids. That's not Sunlight Christian Academy. We have a mission, and our mission is to anyone with any different background, any different walk of life, and probably the vast majority of our students don't have a church background, don't have a faith background. They don't know anything about Jesus or Christianity. Some do. There's plenty of Christian parents who are like, man, I want to get my kid into a Christian school. They want to educate our kids. But as a school, we're really open about the fact that, man, we are welcoming to people from every different background and walk of life. But they have to understand we are a distinctively Christian school, and we are going to live out, teach the Bible, the gospel, Jesus to the max. And so I always tell our staff, man, we have a mission, and we've got to be teaching, showing, displaying the love of Jesus 5 days a week and beyond to not only the kids, but also their families. And we're really trying to help people come to know Jesus, to know the love of Christ, and to surrender their lives in faith to them. And that's another amazing aspect of the school, just how many people have become Christians over the years, over the long period of time, and given their life to Christ as a result of the fact that they sent a child, maybe first to our preschool, but now, especially as they continue up the grades. And I hope that is something that's really true of us, that we really do shine the light of Christ into the learning that happens here and for the kids.
There's always a danger of mission drift when rapid growth hits. What are we doing to stay grounded in that, to stay grounded in our vision and our mission in the midst of, extreme growth and scaling up?
I mean, I think we stand firm to what our values are. And the most important thing is we continue to bring on Christian educators who truly at their core have the desire to instill the love of Jesus into the learning. That's important. So we're developing training programs here so that we can continue to educate our teachers with the Christian values that they need. So that's one way. Another way.
On that, Jerry was on a podcast and he was talking deeply onto that. Yes. So if you guys are watching, be sure to check out the other episode with Jerry on it.
Yes.
But yeah, I think Sarah's you've done a fantastic job of. I mean, some of these teachers are slam dunk. Like these guys, they love God. They love the kids, and then you build that family relationship to the families and to God. I mean, it's working well.
That's right. And we create, of course, our family core within the school where the teachers know that they have love and support from their leadership and from their peers. We all work together, and we, not just your child's teacher is going to know your child.
Yeah.
All the teachers make an effort. The pastors, you guys come, you do chapel. Like, we all get to know the children and we build a community together. And I feel like with all the new students coming in, because we are growing, and the new families coming in, that is key. And, it's hard to maintain that small family feel as you grow. But because of the relationship building that we are all dedicated to doing, that's one way we don't drift from our mission and our vision here.
Yeah. How does you mentioned missional and covenant school? How does that affect our mission, or how we do things on a day-to-day basis, or how we see or our outlook on our mission field here?
What are you asking?
Why is missional and covenant, that distinction? Why is that important for Sunlight?
Well, I think a lot of Christian schools, as an example, before you would be able to enroll your child, there'd be some kind of interview, and you'd have to come in and talk about where you're a member of a church, what you're doing to train your child in the Christian faith. And I mean, it's great. Of course, as Christians, we should pass our faith to the next generation. And I'm glad there are schools that are for that. I think our school is for that, by the way. If you're a Christian, I think this is an excellent place to be. One of the things that might be a little unique is, and I think we've had some families that are Christians who have had to try to figure this out because going back to what we were talking about before, where it's good to surround yourself with the right group of people. A lot of Christian parents are like, wait a second, not all the kids in this class are Christians.
That comes up
And
sometimes.
what's up with that? And we have to make sure we let parents know, like, oh, actually, this is great. You want your children to have a stable Christian place, but they're also interacting with people who are not Christians. Because this is why do you want to get into like a Christian bubble
Yeah.
where your kids don't know what's happening in the rest of culture and the rest of the world? And I think, I don't know that that's like an advertisement to other Christian parents, but I do think there's something special that happens where we know, like, man, we don't hesitate to teach the Bible, to speak the name of Jesus, to express the gospel message. In fact, over the course of time, it's just like super effective. When I look at like our older grades, I'm like, man, people are coming to Christ as a result of what we're doing. But
Yeah. If you think about Jesus, though, and you think about his mission and what we're all called to do as Christians, who did he surround himself with? Who did he pour his heart and his teaching
that's right.
into? They were the outcasts. They were the people that did not know God. I mean, if we're a Christian school and we're truly trying to fulfill our calling as Christians, why would we close our door to people who don't know him? It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. And I'm not bashing a covenant school in any way. I'm just saying at the core of who we are, that is what we're called to
So
do.
let
That's what
me
we
let me
want.
try and say something which I think is sort of interesting, which is, I actually think that what the school is like a really systematic way to carry out the Great Commission.
Amen.
And what I mean by that is, when you go to carry out the Great Commission, not all of it's systematic. I mean, sometimes I'll call it almost random. You're out at the grocery store, you're shopping, you don't have in mind that you're trying to do anything, but you run across someone. Next thing you know, you're in a conversation, and God can use moments that are sort of, I'll just call them more random. This is systematic. Right now, we take 60 kids into every kindergarten class, and for the most part, these 60 kids are probably going to keep with us all the way through high school, is probably the plan, right? And, if I reflect on, so my daughter, Kate, is in the, call it the tip of the spear. She's in the highest grade. Right now it's 9th grade. Next year it'll be 10th. And her class was like the first one to go through. If I reflect back, most of the families didn't have a church home, weren't Christians. There were some that did. But now, I think, surprisingly, in a good way, amazingly, like all the kids have some faith in Christ. And there's a few like families that have been like, they've told us, I'll never come to church. And even a few of those families are like, I think I'm going to start coming to church.
Church.
Like the seeds of faith are, maybe it's taken a full like 10 years to have them blossom, but they're starting to grow and to blossom. And the reason I'm saying this sort of systematic and long-term impact is, okay, we're getting a system started, and 50 years from now, I know that none of us will be involved, but Sunlight Christian Academy is going to continue to exist. And who knows how many kindergartners they'll take in a year.
Wow.
It'll probably be way more than 60, 50 years from now, okay? But the thing about it is like that mission will be continuing on because we built this system that is going to build relationships that help people come to know Jesus. And I really think that as a result, it's just a great investment for a church to have a school that, is carrying out the Great Commission in a really systematic, organized way. And it is really organized, by the way. Down to the jot and tittle of the scope and sequence of all the curriculum and what's going to be taught in every grade and how we're going to cover things and the type of events that are going to be had. There's a lot of detail that's gone into, all right, here's how we take a child who's 5 years old and turn them into like absolute champions in this world. These are people who are going to affect our world in ways like we can't even imagine. The leadership roles they're going to play, the way that they're going to affect society, the type of leadership that they're going to have in the church. And we're on the front end of that. Maybe, 50 years from now, someone will look back and listen to this podcast and be like, wow, they didn't even know. They didn't even know.
Yeah. I bet you if we did a podcast 19 years ago about starting
Oh,
a
yeah.
preschool,
We didn't even know.
We did not know.
that would be insane.
It would be insane.
I have up here a list of what you put down as some of our distinctives of our school model. Mission versus covenant school model. I think we talked about that. I think at the bottom there's systematic and long-term impact. We talk about, okay, what are we doing? How can other people get involved? When we get, age out or whatever, we move away, we could bring someone into a system and then have that thing keep on going. And it creates a long-term impact for these 60 kids or maybe more throughout the ages. It takes 10 years. So I think we talked through that. I'd like to talk through briefly the church-school joint mission and why this partnership between school and church is not just functional, but powerful.
Haas?
I mean, from the school standpoint, we're here as a Christian school to teach our children and families about Jesus, and that all comes from the church. I mean, it's a partnership. We couldn't do it without the church. And I think it's so valuable to have the pastors and the other staff members here at the church involved in our school functions, because not only does it help build the relationships, but it shows our families the true mission of the church and how the church loves to spread and shine, the light of Jesus through, volunteering and displaying actions of love. I feel like we need the core of the church in order to function at all as a school. Period. We couldn't do it without that. I know you might have some thoughts that you want to share.
Well, I'll come at things a different way. Yours is probably the better way. Mine's just a different way. If I think about the history of kind of Christian schooling movements, especially connected to our denomination, there's been a tremendous Christian schooling movement. Most of the Christian schools were covenant schools, almost all, in fact. To have a mission school is very rare. They're all covenant schools, and so what wound up happening is that Christians said, man, we got to, okay, they're sending us messages, so I'm trying to both talk and figure out what they're saying at the same time. No big deal. These parents, they wanted to create a school, and generally what happened is because we're creating a school for our kids, there's not enough of our kids in any one church, so there'd be several churches that would band together, and then there'd be an independent Christian school. And usually it wasn't run by the church. It was usually like a parent-run board. And for that reason, it wasn't connected to one church. It was, students went to a variety of churches. And so these schools didn't have a relationship with a particular church. And I think as a result, my viewpoint is there's something much more effective when you have church and school working together, the way we're supporting each other, the way we're developing together, the way in which these institutions work hand in glove, I think is amazing. And so actually I would give the advice to tons of churches, man, you want to have an awesome, mission program, start a school. That's a mission.
I mean, we're called to create disciples.
Yeah.
What better way to do that than through education and from starting them out when they're young children?
And I think the Bible has as a huge value that one generation should proclaim their faith to the next.
Yes.
And I actually think when churches lose that, where they lose, we don't exist for ourselves. We exist for the next generation. A church that exists with the eye toward the next generation, I think, is really healthy. And I actually think that's what it means to mature even as a person. As we get older, when we're young, we kind of live for ourselves. But then, you have children, you realize like, oh, actually, my child's more important than I am. And then I think when you become a grandparent, I'm not quite there yet, but when you become a grandparent, then it's like, okay, my focus is actually so much bigger now on passing the faith down. I think that's what it means to become mature. And so churches that I think wind up not focused on how do I pass the faith to the next generation. They don't have a next generation. They fall out of that. Yeah, I think most churches that just sort of become elderly, you can tell like, oh man, they're dying. It's important that the church as a whole turn their attention and their focus to proclaiming to the next generation. There's something healthy about it. That's my point.
Yeah.
And I actually think that people of every age and every generation that have as like a goal in their life, man, we got to reach the next generation. And there winds up being a lot of opportunity when you have a school because it impacts your children's ministry, impacts your youth ministry. And, there's plenty of adults who need to be discipled and poured into. And so it doesn't matter what age you are. The point is somehow or another invest in the next generation. Like I can tell, like when my kids start having kids, I'm going to be concerned about helping them have kids.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are all my thoughts. Just there's something really brilliant about the church and school working together. And a lot of that has to do with the Great Commission and proclaiming from one generation to the next who God is and passing your faith.
We're not just a church or a school with just randomized values that kind of everything applies. It's shaped by discipleship.
That's right.
What does this look like every day on a daily kind of routine for students at the school?
Well, we have a lot of great programs that started in our church. For example, 222 Disciple, Pros, which is public reading of scripture. And we started delivering them through adults, one-on-one relationships through adults, groups of adults with public reading of scripture. And we immediately, as soon as I heard about them, I was like, oh, how can we do this at the school? These are great programs. What can we do? And so we have a bunch of people that have teamed up together here with our church, and they're creating versions of these programs that we're now implementing in the school. So public reading of scripture, for example, we now have that in our upper school, and our children get to listen to the Bible being read to them once a week and have discussions based on what they're hearing. And then 222 Disciple is where one person meets with another person and basically shares the message of the gospel to them throughout the course of maybe 8 months. And we have a lot of our teachers now who are trained, and now they're sitting with our upper school students and they're training them, and now they're going to be training the next. So I just think it's really cool how we've taken the things that the church has developed and we're able to integrate them within the school.
Yeah. Yeah. How about any thoughts on that yourself?
Well, just down that line, so I mentioned that my youngest daughter, Kate, is in the 9th grade class, and actually the principal, Miss Ray, has been discipling my child using 222 Disciple, and I can just tell what an impact that's making, and I appreciate Miss Ray so much, like as a parent to see, oh, wow, here's a person who, is investing in my child. It's something. And I know like Kate and Miss Ray, that's not just like, oh, that's my principal. This is going to be a lifelong friend of hers.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Yeah, and I'll actually bring up my own son. He came to preschool here, and we didn't have upper level grades, so he went to public school. Loved it so much here, and now he works here. And he coaches basketball and football, so he has relationships with the kids in that way. He now volunteers with our youth group with the church, and was just telling me about a conversation he had with a child, very deep conversation. The child needed some guidance. And then that continued on the next day in the classroom. He kind of pulled him aside. And so it's just so valuable to take all of these wonderful programs that we have here at the church and integrate them with the school. And we are one body here, and we're all working together
Yeah. I want to double click on this before we wrap up this episode. But how do you both think about impact, not just in test scores, but in the type of people we're helping to raise up? Say I'm a parent of the school who's trying to learn about it, or even someone who's getting hired here. How are you both thinking about impact in the children's lives?
I mean, for me, that's the most important thing. We want to raise kind, loving, strong Christians. And I can just tell you a couple things. Grad Venture happens at Universal Studios every year for all the 8th graders in the state of Florida, and they're all invited. And our parents and our teachers have commented the past 2 years on just there's such a difference between our kids and all the other kids there. They're just true, kind-hearted individuals. It shows at field trips. Those are things I can share with you. Our kids stand out. They stand out as leaders. And to me, that's true success. Pastor Scott, I don't know if you want to contribute to that, but those are just little examples that I have.
Oh, I mean, actually, if I think about the difference between what you're going to find in a public school class and what you're going to find in our classes, I mean, the contrast is so stark, it's unbelievable. Um, but I don't know, maybe I'll say more than just, oh, they're different. Yeah,
Right.
they're different. I'll go back to some of what we were talking about at the beginning. I think actually we have kids who are developing physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and we had a really tough incident at our school this year where, a former student wound up in a critical situation. And it was really tough on these kids because it was like the first, really horrible thing that's happened to them collectively. And, I wound up going over the next day and spending a bunch of time with these kids and listening to them as they were kind of processing things. And along the way, they decided, you know what, let's hold a chapel and let's invite all the rest of the school to come and be part of this chapel. And these kids, they didn't have adults lead the chapel, they led it. And the way they led it, I thought was so amazing. It was so genuine. These, I'll call them kids, but young adults truly knew how to help other people and to be there in times of crisis. And I mean, it was wholehearted. And I mean, it stands out in my mind. I really, I remember leaving that chapel and I'm like, okay, this is why I believe in Christian education. If this had happened in a public school, nobody could have processed anything. And I mean, I don't know, maybe there would have been some small attempts here or there with teachers, but what happened in our school with these kids, I was like, wow, these young adults are ready to take up leadership in this world in ways that almost no one else is, and to truly be helpful to the whole of society.
Crisis hits, and these kids are
They're the
They're
leaders.
rocks in the community.
We're not going to make it through our lives without crises.
Yeah.
And I think to look at ninth graders and go, wow, these people are where the rest of the world would be scattering, these kids are like rocks. Okay. I was like, man, this is why I believe in Christian education.
They immediately turned to God in that moment, and they knew that God had them, and they wanted to pray, and they wanted to sing worship, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, to share with each other, all kinds of stuff.
Let's turn our eyes to the future as we end this podcast. No secret here, we're planning to expand. Bit of a recap for anyone listening here. We've hit capacity in our campuses. What's the biggest challenge here? What's the next challenge to face with the school? And I know that we said God calls us. We don't have the details figured out, but we've sensed that there's a call for Christian education. There's a mission field there's a mission we feel called to. Do we have all the details figured out? No. Do we have some? Maybe. Maybe it's like an idea of a detail even. What's the next chapter of Sunlight, and how do you see it playing out?
Well, the biggest thing, we know that we're going to have a space issue. It's looming because we've expanded the number of classes we have, and I guess it was a little year and a half ago when we opened the middle school, the PGA campus, and we moved all of our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders out. There was just 80 kids at the time that we moved over. But that allowed us the following school year to go from 2 sections of each grade to 3 sections of each grade. And so, like our current 9th grade and 8th grade, we only had 1 section of each class. So what's going to happen is we're going to start having more and more sections of each class come up. This year, there's 120 kids who are in our middle school. And we know that next year we'll have 180 kids over at our PGA campus, which is the absolute maximum. But the year after that, if we do nothing, we're going to have at least 240 kids in a building that can only fit 180. So we're aware of the fact that we're a couple school years away from it, but we have to start planning now because we're going to need to expand and have more space. And that's the reason that we're kind of looking towards starting the Rising to the Future campaign, is we realize, like, okay, there's a real opportunity here, something for us to really invest in. And while we don't know the details of, where will this next campus be, or how large will it be, or how many students will it fit, we just realize that now is the time to get prepared, because we've got to start looking toward the future and preparing for the opportunities that we just already are sensing that God's putting in front of us.
Yeah. Anything to add? Or
I mean, we definitely need to invest in these future leaders of our community, of our country, of our world. And what better way to do that than through expansion? And so, yeah, I mean, this is the next phase for us, and we have to start really getting serious about it and making plans.
yeah, God has certainly sent a way for us, and we're just trying to figure out how to surf this thing.
That's right.
Yeah. So back to our surfing metaphor or our hurricane metaphor, whichever one is better. As we've gone through some expansion, not only did we expand in PGA, but we also started a new church and school in Winter Garden, Florida. There's now 6 locations for Sunlight. 4 of them have a school attached to them. And there's expansion opportunities all around each of these places. But in the process of doing that, like, even for us, it's like, man, we stretched out to grab hold of this next step. And yeah, it's like we barely have recovered.
Yeah.
Or maybe we haven't even recovered yet. We might still be underwater, so to speak, riding our surfboard, but we're like, when are we going to break out above water? But then we're like, okay, but there's a larger wave coming and we better get ready for it. So I think there's some aspect in which part of our thinking is, hey, we need to solidify our current reality and then prepare for whatever wave might be coming behind. Yeah. We've sensed God at work. We know he's going to continue to work. How do we really get ourselves ready organizationally, financially, in every possible way, so that we can make this, ride this next wave or catch this next hurricane, or whatever you'd like to say about it.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to be part of a lot of this. Some of the unknowns help build faith. It's exciting to see people be brought into our path that we could lock hands with, and we'll be like, yeah, okay, God's brought us together. Let's continue down this path. If you guys are curious about what we're looking to in this campaign, it's called the Rising Towards the Future campaign. There's going to be a link down in the description below for the developments of this. This is something that's continually developing. And I'm sure you're going to hear more about it through the coming months here. That's for sure. And you guys have any closing thoughts or reflections on today?
I just really appreciate anybody who's out there watching. This truly is a special place, and I'm humbled and honored to be a part of it. And thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks,
Great.
guys. Well, that's been a great episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for continuing to support on our Patreon or the donations or the sponsors. Thank you so much. Be sure to check out any further links down in the description for more information about the RTF campaign. Anyway, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks.
The future is now.